So today, we're going to dive into a really powerful short story by the French writer Alphonse Daudet. It's called The Last Lesson. And it's one of those timeless pieces that really makes you stop and think, because it asks this huge question. What happens when a core part of who you are, your own language, is just taken away? I mean, really think about that for a second. Imagine you wake up one morning and find out that starting tomorrow, your native language is banned. You can't speak it, you can't learn it in school, it's basically being wiped off the map. How would that even feel? How would that change the way you see the words you've been using your entire life? Well, for our main character, a young French boy named Franz, this isn't just a thought experiment. It becomes his sudden, shocking reality. We see this whole story through his eyes, and on this one particular morning, he has absolutely no idea that his entire world is about to be turned upside down. So the story kicks off on what seems like any other day. The sun's out, birds are chirping. But for our guy Franz, the morning is already filled with that familiar pit-in-your-stomach kind of dread. He's running late for school for starters, and he's terrified of his teacher, Monsieur Hamel. Why? Well, there's a test today on participles, grammar rules, and he hasn't studied at all. The temptation to just skip school and hang out in the fields is huge, but somehow he fights it and rushes off. As he's hurrying past the town hall, he sees something that makes him pause. There's a crowd of people huddled around the bulletin board, and this is a major red flag. For the last 2 years, during the war, that board has been the source of all the bad news. Lost battles, draft orders, you name it. Seeing that crowd just gives him this deep sense of unease. And when Franz finally gets to the school, that eerie feeling only gets stronger. Normally, the place is a total chaos of noise. You'd hear desks slamming, kids chanting their lessons all at once. But today, nothing. It's dead silent. Quiet as Sunday morning, he says. The very commotion he was counting on to sneak in late, well, it's just gone. And as he steps inside, the strangeness doesn't just stop at the door. The entire vibe in the classroom is different. Okay, so 2 things hit him right away. First, his teacher, M. Hamel, is dressed up in his absolute best clothes. A fancy green coat and frilled shirt he only wore on prize days. And second, the backbenches of the classroom, which are always empty, are full of people. The whole room just feels heavy, strange, and solemn. And who's sitting on those backbenches? It's the village elders. You've got the former mayor, the postmaster, and other important figures from the town all sitting there silently, looking incredibly somber. Their presence is the biggest sign yet that this is no ordinary day. Hamel waits for Franz to get to his desk. Then, in this really grave and gentle voice, he makes an announcement that explains everything. He tells them an order has come from Berlin. This is their very last lesson in French. Starting tomorrow, only German will be taught in the schools here. For Franz, these words are like a thunderclap. And suddenly, it all makes a terrible, horrible kind of sense. The quiet school, the teacher's fancy clothes, the crowd at the bulletin board. And in that one single moment, everything changes for Franz. The news just lands with this incredible weight, and the first thing he feels is this overwhelming sense of regret. The change in Franz is immediate. His schoolbooks, which just felt like a heavy burden a few minutes ago, now seem like precious old friends he can't stand to lose. And his teacher, Mr. Hamel, he's not just some cranky guy with a ruler anymore. All Franz can feel is this profound sadness that he's about to be gone forever. And that's when he finally gets it. He understands why the village elders are there. They've come to thank M. Hamel for 40 years of service, sure, but it's way more than that. It's their way of paying respects to the country, the culture, and the language that's being ripped away from them. So this is where the story really pivots. It goes from being this personal story of a boy's regret to a much bigger, more universal message about the incredible power of language and identity. So to really get the weight of this, you need a little context. The story is set in Alsace and Lorraine, 2 French regions that were taken over by Prussia after the Franco-Prussian War. So this order to only teach German, this wasn't just some administrative change. No, this was an attempt to completely erase their French identity. And that leads us to the most powerful idea in the whole story, delivered by M. Hamel himself. He tells his students that when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold on to their language, it's like they have the key to their own prison. Think about that. Language isn't just words. It's identity, it's history, it's their unbreakable connection to who they are. And in that final lesson, something pretty amazing happens. As M. Hummel explains grammar, the very subject Franz hated, it all just clicks. He realizes he has never, ever listened so carefully before. And maybe his teacher has never explained it with so much patience. In this one last hour, the beauty and the logic of his own language finally become crystal. The lesson continues, every moment soaked in this bittersweet feeling of importance. But, the clock is ticking, and the end is coming. And then the moment comes. The church clock strikes 12. At that exact same instant, the trumpets of the Prussian soldiers sound from right outside the window, this harsh, metallic reminder of their new reality. M. Hamel stands up. His face is pale. He tries to speak, but he's so choked up with emotion, the words just won't come out. Unable to speak, he turns to the blackboard, grabs a piece of chalk, and with all the strength he has left, he writes 2 words in huge letters, Vive la France, long live France. It's his final, silent, defiant message. Then, leaning against the wall, he just gestures to the students. School is dismissed. You may go. Daudet's story leaves us with this really powerful question, doesn't it? For Franz and his village, their language was the key to their prison. It was the one thing that could keep their identity alive, even under occupation. It really makes you wonder, in our own lives, what is that essential thing we have to hold on to? What is the key to your prison?